Grown black folks talk. More folks to leave in 2023. Black men with practical harems. Like I said, there's a lot going on. And I've had to give a lot of thought to this topic. There is a content creator by the name of Lennon Honor, and this video may not still be available because Mr. Honor is reorganizing his YouTube page right now. And I believe he's getting ready to leave YouTube, so he's doing a legacy page basically. He's going to have what he considers his top content available for the public, and there may be more things available for members only. But a long time ago, because his channel's about 10 years old, he did a discussion about, and if I can find it, I'll put it in the description. Uh, it was part of another discussion, though it may be hard to find, about polygamy in the Black community, about how none of the men who want to practice this have the resources to actually have a family, a stable family. Even if we lived in a polygamous country, they do not have the resources to do it. So what they do is they just rotate women, and eventually what ends up happening, the ones who figure it out leave, but then they rotate another set in. So what it really becomes is sort of a traveling carnival of broken people, including broken children. And of course, he didn't mention this, but there's a reason the STD rates among Black men and women are so high, and this is the reason. However, well, let me add one more thing before the however. You also can find this described more recently in Sir Walter Jones' book, The Four Women That Men Desire. Four women about constitutes a small harem. How broken men would like to have four women. So he doesn't have to work too hard with any one of them, but can get everything he desires from those four. He gets, and I'll put that in the description for those who might want to check that out. He wants one that he can have ready sex with. That's girl A. He wants a woman who's going to be a beautiful mistress. That's girl B, but she's more interested in looking good than she is on you can't touch my hair. He will probably marry girl C, who is, the ride or die, who is the woman who he wants to raise his children, but he finds her boring. And then there is the girl D. And girl D is the wild child, the fatal attraction. She's no good for him, but she keeps the excitement going. She adds color to his life. She may also be the one to get him killed if she doesn't do it himself, but the drama can be addicting. And Sir Walter Jones says that around broken men, you can find all four types of women. So, however, these do not have to be sexual relationships. I remain a virgin, but I have been in social and community circumstances with three men who illustrate this practical harem pattern. I will talk at some length now about two. The third, I'll get there when I get there. Number one, we'll call him the director. He's certainly the one that I loved the most. And I will always give honor where honor's due, with a caveat. Had I not been in a vulnerable place in my life, neither he nor the next man probably would have gotten my attention or appealed. But these are not, quote unquote, the bad boys of the Black community. I don't deal with bad boys. Ever. I never have. I never will. I will be 41. I'll be 42 next year. I do not deal with bad boys. I never have. My father set too high a standard. So these are supposedly the good men, all three gainfully employed in important positions, all three award winning in their fields. So they believe that they're doing all that they need to do for America, if you will. And they should be doing enough to get respect in the community. And they had the respect in their community, but in a particular way. The director in his field is the best to ever do it in a particular time period. And I met him at a time when I was deeply depressed. Frank had just passed away. And I was deeply depressed at this time. There's a lot of other stuff going on also. Lost a job, lost Frank. It was a lot. It was a lot. And I happened to decide to take a chance because the production was coming near to me to go get involved. And it was the women around. I mean, I knew him because he's a friend of a friend. And I had thought of him as very attractive, but they gave me the wrong age for him. They made him the age he is actually today, 60. But they made him that old then. Wasn't quite there yet. So I gave up on that. But he had seen me too. But I was with someone else at the time that we met. But there was an attraction. Then we have a lot of things in common. We have a lot of the same interests for the black community. This is not a bad man, but the kind of community that he built. And I mentioned that I came in a very low state in my life. The women there reached out to me and made me feel at home. Then I realized they must have seen that I was very deeply hurt. And I was. It was a terrible time period. But I came there clawing my way out, trying to find my way out of the darkness. And for 2 years, that was a beautiful refuge for me. One of the most productive periods of my entire life. Unfortunately, I have no assets, nor is there any lasting legacy of any of that. And there's no one else that can say they have any lasting legacy either. Because unfortunately, I, unbeknown to me, had landed on the ship of fools. It wasn't obvious at first. But as time passed, he had the personality of a people pleaser. And he also was running sort of a Noah's Ark for people who were not, like myself, going to pass through on my way, recovering from some things that had happened to me in my life. To make a long story short, he had felt the need to rescue a lot of his boys that he grew up with. And those boys were using the women there as a kind of chattel. It took me a little while to figure it out. Also, the people above who financed this production were also doing the same thing. I had no way of knowing that. I also had no way of knowing how little of a backbone this man had till about 2.5 years in. I left because I left him, I left everything he touched, because I will not sit by as women that I know get exploited and support that. He was warned multiple times, even by some of the women involved, long before I got wind and dropped the same warning. Did he pay any attention? No, he did not, because he wasn't going to give up his boys and he wasn't going to give up his position. Well, long story short, his boys started a mutiny that blew up the production in the middle of it. Everybody got fired at the end of the week. Now, the other men who were above them, who were exploiting the situation, of course, now they couldn't find anybody else having to put up with them, so they ended up having to invite the director and the main crew back. But I wasn't going to come back because the same people were in the same positions. No. Well, they lived along to COVID-19. And COVID-19 came and destroyed everything. When I tell you that it is a burnt out shell, and when I tell you that this man, the best to ever do it, has now been reduced to looking for opportunities with the last older black women who are still willing to put up with him, that's what happened. See, what the number one thing that happens with black men that practical harems that don't have anything going on. Eventually, the people that they allow to also manipulate the harem lead to situations that lead to their destruction. And sometimes the people that they allow to do this that they want to keep around are other women. Sometimes, even a pimp has a bottom bitch. I'll get to that later. Case number two. This one I cut off in 3 months. And by the way, the first one was a single child of a single mother, but the second one's from a two-parent home. And I will say, always giving honor while honor was due. I was coming back from a major injury, and the information I received from this man allowed me to pay my bills. I have not yet missed a bill. God used him to get me some necessary information, which is also allows me to be doing what I'm doing today. That information will be saving my life into the future. First of all, honor where honor's due. And these are not men that I hate. These are men that I loved. But he too had an awful lot of women around him, and I noticed that they would get out of pocket with me, and then I realized, oh, okay, I'm in a long distance relationship. Y'all are there. Y'all can't get a hold of him. So if he's not willing to commit to any of you and you're there, ain't no way. I left. Ain't no way. Now, because this is a self-made man, we'll call him media mogul. I the different things going on, you know, real hard troubles with women earlier, healing necessary. There's a lot of things he needs to work out with God. Again, not a bad man, just not ready. Mid 50s now, but just not ready. The thing about it is, though, when a man has a lot of women around, he has no motivation because his idea is just like people's idea about having alcohol. I can give it up anytime I want. But if you choose one, you lose all the rest. So when you're getting everything you need from having a whole bunch of women around, even on a social and intellectual level, you don't have any motivation to be committed to any one or any three or any five if you have more. Because remember, I said Sir Walter Jones' book says the number is four. But let's just say the men that I dealt with, you're going to have to put a couple powers of 10 on that. These three. The last one, I will simply give honor to by not mentioning it at all at this particular moment in internet history. But again, my attitude is when a man is willing to let someone operating as his chosen bottom bitch begin to abuse the other women, I can't get with that. Because you sure not gonna do with me. See, in all three of these situations, the other thing I noticed, and then the boss that I had around the time that Frank died, the other thing I noticed about this is these men are not very good at protecting even their hardest working women. But see, I never worry about those things because if I decide, some of y'all from the Thieves and Thought show already know, I really don't need a man to do that per se. If I decide to deal with you, you're gonna be dealt with. That's not gonna be a problem for me. But if I have to do this constantly for myself, why do I need a man for that? In other words, if I'm working hard for you, but you ain't got time to protect me, why am I with you? And that's not why I'm not with any of them. Now, I left them 2017, and 2022. Video's not paused. I want you to think about that. Do you want to be in somebody's rotation? See, the other thing that happens in these situations is a whole lot of men, when you meet them with all these women around, they look better than what they really are because what you don't see is how much of that look good has to do with the work that black women are doing behind the scenes. So, and the black men around them could also look good, but I remember with the director, these strange dynamics. One in particular, he was aggressive. He was both not wanting me there because my gifts were threatening to him. The other one would take my stuff and do things with it without permission. They were aggressive, but they were also sexually aggressive in some ways. But again, I ain't the one. I'm not the one. So there were limits on certain things, and the other reason I'm not the one is because the connections that I have. That's too much trouble for anybody around here. It's just like as time passes, it's become more of a known thing. Nah, that's not what you want to do. Um, but it was weird, and I've since thought to myself, and the thing is, one was gay, and one was straight. And they both did things like this. So I'm like, okay, at this point, it does not matter what your sexual orientation is. This is just how you treat black women. You trying to find out, is she a threat or is she willing to be chattel? It's actually, in retrospect, kind of scary. But see, these are the things you don't know. The way that you vet these situations is there's a couple things. First of all, people you need to leave in 2023, men who have a lot of women around them and a lot of weak men. With the confidence level that the director had, he should have had a stronger crew if he was as strong and as together as I thought he was. But I didn't know that. I was a lot younger. People who carry a weak crew are weak. Period. Because you got a weak crew, you're a weak captain. Period. With the exception of if you are their teacher. But over time, if you have a situation like that, they should be getting better, not worse. But if there's a lot of women around, and I mean a lot relative to the number of men, you need to leave that alone. If this man is not actually committed to one of those women by marriage. I'm talking about long time living girlfriend because he can have more than one. Now he can have a marriage and he can have a mistress too. Sir Walter Jones talked about married men that have three more. Yeah, that can be obvious, but you can also observe this by the behavior of some of the women. But what I'm saying is, if man is uncommitted and he has a lot of women around him and there are no strong men anywhere in the picture, nope, leave those men in 2023. Don't be in any condition where you have to compete for attention with other women. Don't do it. It never ends well. And as number one found out, the director found out, you're going to keep playing around and playing around and playing around with these people, and they're going to destroy everything you're doing. This is why I left situation number three, because I've already seen this movie and I chose to restore it to the video store and not be a part of the collapse. I got away from the director before the collapse too. Was not put here to go down with a ship when the captain has been warned. Not over here. Nope. And I advise all of y'all to graduate in 2022 from touching situations like that with a 10-foot pole because those ships are going to go down. They're going to go down. It's inevitable. You cannot make chattel, you cannot allow to be a people pleaser and allow people to make chattel of people you're responsible for and get away with it. That's just not going to work. So get away from men like that. Get away from the women that enable it. Now, I need to mention a fifth situation. No, four, because I didn't really talk about my boss. There are bottom BITCHs. A lot of older black women play this role. I shared with you that I had a friend for 11 years who at the end of his life decided to get out of pocket with me and got cut off. I had to cut off one of our older mutual associates who kept hounding me and other women who he had also disrespected deeply and to talk about how we were wrong for doing this to him. I'm like, ma'am, do you understand what happened? You coming over here talking about this, that, and the other thing. Did you actually bother to ask me? You know I'm the kind of person who usually sticks in there. Did you bother to ask me about that? Did you ask his daughter what he put her through? And then I blocked her number. You have to get away. Leave them in 2022 as well. Women who make excuses for men that are a hot mess, get away from them. Get away from them too. Leave them in 2022 as well. Because again, we captains, we crews. You basically are on a ship of fools, and there's an iceberg out in front of you, and they sit up here 22 and a half knots, and there's nobody in the crow's nest. Actually, no, that person is you talking about iceberg dead ahead. But the difference is in 2022, we do have headlamps and things like that. We have radar and people with headlamps and radar and people screaming at them to change course. think they want something on those icebergs. There are men like this who think that that thing is just a diamond they're going to run into and collect. Yeah, they're going to collect. They're going to collect seawater at the bottom of the North Atlantic, is what they're going to do. See, Captain Smith of the Titanic did something really dumb. He decided he was going to retire, and boy, was he ever. And he was going to break some speed records. But you know, again, there's no headlamps. There's nothing like that. There's no brakes on the Titanic. It was a dumb situation, but it was not as dumb as it would have been if he had been rolling up out there in 2013 and 2017 and 2022 with half the crew sitting up here talking about, man, you do see that that's an iceberg, right? But you still gonna plow full speed ahead into the thing because you know them diamonds, and we just gonna get some because I done found what I want to do, and I got all these women around me, and there ain't gonna be no consequences because they gonna help me out. Well, 3 times in my life, mess around and find out what happened. Because here's what happens with the practical harem, just like everything else. Like my grandmother used to say, there comes a day when a man can't get it up no more. Whatever it happens to be. And at that point, because he has built no real connections with family and community at all, because the internet is not real when the chips are down, what happens is the abandonment. You get to the end of the road, you mistreated everyone who loved you, and then smack hits the fan. And you find yourself standing there, becoming from being the best who ever did it to a beggar. Go check the homeless numbers for black men right now. For white men, go look at what's happening to Donald Trump right now. Not as much as people think he deserves, but imagine his misery. Leave men who collect practical harems and the bottom bitchs that work with these pimps on the good black man side in 2022. Do not go out there on a ship of fools looking for big diamonds gleaming in the middle of the North Atlantic. You have been warned. All right. Y'all have a good day now. Stay off the ship of fools. Bye. Thank you for listening.